Hi, welcome back to ODE YouTube channel, and today is day 9. This is my birthday, and now lots of birthdays, 47. Okay, this is my birthday, and let's see the color for day 9. Sometimes I like them, and I like to pay especially attention to the color of my day. So day 9 is here, and let's open this, and it's like a kind of a green, which I may like, and it's called bittersweet. Okay, it may be a bittersweet day today. So this is a standard ink. I wonder how this will look like. If this is kind of a turquoise color, I think I may like it, but it may be one of those turquoise that are very hard to define between blue and green. So let's see. I will show it in a moment when I do the swatch. So I'll be right back. And here I am again to see how these apparently very light green ink will behave. So let's take the little 3 drops. 1, 2, that one was bigger, no problem. It's not really a very scientific test, it's just swatching inks, apparently mostly in the same way, so we can compare them, but not a scientific with precise amounts. So let's bring up our knife. It's I would say this ink is too bluish for me. I prefer warm light greens or those muddy dark greens, like almost black. That's the kind of greens that I enjoy the most. I'm just going to dipping the blade into the water just to clean it a little bit. So this reminds me from my head of the new it's already been discontinued, but the newer version of the Parker Quink green. There was an older one, and there was a more modern one. The modern was more bluish, the other one was more green or more kind of yellowish. But this one still amazes me a little bit because it's fun. On this outer part that is lighter, it looks bluer, but on this part it looks more with a little bit of yellow, looks warmer. So cool tones on the lighter part and warm tones on the darker parts. I'm quite curious to see what will come out of here. And if you are curious too, please don't go away, and I'll be back soon for the rest of this video. Now that the swatch is dry, let's take a look at this bittersweet ink. We can see this is a nice warm tone, medium green. I enjoy this, and I will show you in a moment why. And so for that, let me show you other swatches that I have here. First I will show you the regular inks, and then I'll go for the Diamine Inkvent Calendar from previous years. And from the regular inks I have here the Lamy green, which is similar but with a lot more shading, and also the Parker Quink green. And what I can say about this is the older version of Parker Quink ink. I can say this ink matches very well all these inks, more even on paper, because this one looks to have, all those have some shading. This one looks to have less, but the average tone is very similar. So I'm very happy to see an ink that can replace the Lamy green or the Parker Quink green. It doesn't look so obvious here on camera, but one day I'll show you better what I mean. I don't need to do that because I have a few bottles of half a liter of Parker Quink green, the vintage one. So I'm not really in the need of a replacement ink. But if I did need more ink like that, I would go, if this is released in a full bottle, I would go for this bittersweet ink, because in my opinion, even if it's not exactly the same, in my opinion, it replaces my need for that ink completely. And for some comparisons, I have here from the Diamine Inkvent Calendar 2019. Let me put this one there, so we know it is a similar one. We have here from 19 the Elf, which is warmer and darker. From 2024 the Noble Fur, which is very nice, very similar. I would say this ink is almost the same basis, but then it has this very bright silver white sheen, so it's different in that way, but the base, I would say, it is the same. And then finally we have the Pine Needle, which also has some green shimmer, and it is different, it's much darker kind of green. This I also like this kind of green, but this is very nice, I would say. I don't need it, so I would not need a full bottle, but I'm happy this ink is available. So let's see now the swatch, the chromatography that I made. The bad stuff here. I draw a line here, and then I put this in water, so on. All the ink was washed away, and we can see it is composed by a little, very faint line of apparently almost a yellowish, but it's very mixed with the green and blue. So no water resistance, that's what the chromatography tells us. And that's something that I will show you in a moment when I will show the water resistance test. So let me show you now the pens that I chose to make the writing samples. Again, 2 pens, and I chose 2 Lamy pens. One is this one that is a kind of a dark yellow and black, this Lamy Safari. If you know, I have this pen for many years now, so more than 10 years I guess. If you know exactly when the name of these and when it was made, please let me know, because I would like to know. I don't know much about the Lamy lineup, but I'm trying to put some tags and names on my pens to have my collection more organized. If you know these, please let me know. So this pen has a black nib also, and this nib is an extra fine nib, and I filled the cartridge with a syringe. And then I have this pen. This is a Lamy with L there, and this pen is a Lamy 2000. It is the Macrolon version, but it is an older version that I got, and I think it is one of the first versions that were produced. I showed this on camera once, and this has some interesting parts, which one of these is that the clip is not spring loaded. So I think this is really a very old version of this. Actually, it is spring loaded, but it doesn't lift if we press the back of it, as it happens in more modern variations. So this is an interesting pen, the Lamy 2000, but it is an older version. So let's go, and it has the L that shows us this is an older version. Let's go for the writing samples. As usual, I have 3 papers, the Moleskine paper. Is a Moleskine agenda. Then we have the a planner, or how do you call it? We have the Oxford optic paper, and we have the Navigator paper. And we can see the ink looks a little bit different. Again, we have some shading here on the Moleskine paper. It looks good. It looks a little bit darker, maybe because the background, the paper is not white. You can see there is that very nice shading, and even here that is more ink on paper. It doesn't have how can I say, it doesn't have any feathering. About the underside, no, oops, focus, no bleed through, which is kind of uncommon with Moleskine paper. Then we have the Oxford optic paper, of course, also with no bleeding, no bleed through, which is obvious. If it doesn't happen with Moleskine paper, it would not happen with Oxford paper. And here we have some shading, but not as nice as with the Moleskine paper. And I would say it looks a little bit more light and more watery, and it's not very pleasant, I would say, with the extra fine nib. I like much more the contrast that we get here on this off-white paper than on this. Finally, we have this paper, the Navigator copy paper, and there you can see this no real feathering, but the lines are not as crisp on this paper. You can see where I wrote here Macrolon, the lines are not completely crisp. It's not exactly feathering, but the limits of the lines are not that defined. There is not much shading on this paper, and this is usual because it seems that the paper absorbs a lot of the ink, and then it doesn't stay on top to have that color variation. It's not good or bad, it depends. I don't like pens or don't like inks that promote a huge amount of shading. Sometimes it gets difficult for me to read. I prefer a little bit more homogeneity of that. About the bleed through, on this paper there is some bleed through, and mostly with the Lamy 2000 that you can see there, because it puts much more ink on the paper. It is a medium nib and it is quite wet. Also, this ink is interesting because we can have some line variation, some not flex, but we have line variation with this Lamy 2000. Then we have the paper here, the Rhodia dot pad, and what we can see is I drew the line there, I put some drops of water, then I cleaned it with the paper after it was complete, after a while, and what you can see is that the line disappears. So this is again an ink that has zero water resistance. It completely disappears on paper, so I would say it's not a good ink if you're thinking in future or if you are thinking of using it in environments where it can get wet. For example, for my use, I would use this ink mostly, I guess, for work, to when I organize my thoughts and presentations and so on. Most of the times I do them on paper, just a rough outline of what I would do. So this would be good for that. It's not a definitive document, it's just my outline. Then I go to PowerPoint or something else and do my presentation, but I usually just think about the topics. I put some bullets and write, and to do that I could use this ink. It's not to save forever. Again, for the drying time, I would say at 15 is almost dry, and 20 seconds it is completely dry. So it is a nice ink overall. It is not water resistant and no bleed through also on this paper. Then it has no special characteristics of sheen or anything like that. Now let's just write the final sentence and end up this review. So, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. This is with the Lamy Safari Extra Fine, and the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog with the Lamy 2000M nib. So we have very different writing experiences with a much drier line on the Safari because it's an extra fine, and then the Lamy 2000 makes a much juicier line on paper. So this is my review of the ink number 9, bittersweet. Overall a very nice green, but and behaves well on most papers, but has the problem of not being water resistant. So this is all for today. I hope to meet you here tomorrow again for another video. Bye.